Hosni Mubarak, born in 1928 in Kafr el-Masella, Egypt, was the president of Egypt from 1981 to 2011, ruling for nearly 3 decades. His regime was responsible for countless human rights abuses, including the torture, disappearance, and extrajudicial killing of thousands of political dissidents, activists, and ordinary citizens. Under a continuous state of emergency, his security forces detained people without trial, subjected them to brutal torture, electric shocks, beatings, and sexual assault, and orchestrated massacres like the 1986 Central Security Forces mutiny suppression, where hundreds were killed. Estimates suggest over 17,000 detentions and hundreds of deaths annually, per Human Rights Watch. In this documentary, we dissect Mubarak's crimes through psychology and psychoanalysis to uncover the mind behind a regime that terrorized a nation. Why Hosni Mubarak? His case is a psychological puzzle, a study of how a decorated military hero morphed into a dictator whose orders unleashed unimaginable suffering. The systematic nature of his regime's violence, torture chambers, mass graves, and silenced voices, reveals a mind obsessed with control, making him a compelling subject for analysis. Picture this: Cairo, 1995, a dark cell in Tora prison. A young activist, blindfolded, hangs from his wrists, his screams muffled as electrodes burn his skin, blood dripping onto the concrete. His crime? Handing out anti-Mubarak flyers. Or January 1986, Central Security Forces conscripts riot over low pay. Mubarak's orders come swift, tanks roll in, gunfire erupts, and by dawn, over 100 lie dead, their bodies bulldozed into pits, per The Guardian. These weren't random acts. They were a machine of terror, and Mubarak was an architect. Let's crawl into the shadows of Mubarak's mind, starting where it all began. Born on May 4th, 1928, in a modest village in Manufia Governorate, Mubarak grew up in a disciplined, patriarchal household. His father, a government clerk, instilled a rigid sense of duty, while his mother enforced traditional values. Per Wikipedia. Psychoanalysis leans on attachment theory. A child's bond with parents shapes their emotional core. Mubarak's strict upbringing likely fostered emotional suppression, where feelings were buried to meet expectations. This could spark narcissistic personality traits, a need to prove superiority, to mask inner insecurity. At 20, he entered the military academy, then the Air Force Academy, earning a pilot's commission in 1950. His rise was meteoric, training in the Soviet Union, flying Spitfires, and commanding the Air Force by 1972, per Wikipedia. The 1973 Yom Kippur War made him a hero. His airstrikes hit 90% of Israeli targets, earning him the rank of Air Chief Marshal, per Wikipedia. But behind the medals, colleagues noted a cold, calculating demeanor, per Newsweek. Mubarak's political ascent began as Anwar Sadat's vice president in 1975. After Sadat's 1981 assassination, Mubarak took power in a single-candidate referendum, a pattern he repeated in 1987, 1993, and 1999, per Wikipedia. His regime's violence wasn't about personal bloodshed, but control through fear. Psychology suggests authoritarian personality disorder, where rigid adherence to hierarchy and power overrides empathy. Mubarak's Egypt was a police state. Security forces had unchecked power to detain and torture under the emergency law, renewed every 3 years, per Human Rights Watch. Psychoanalytically, his need for control was a defense mechanism, projecting his fear of chaos onto a nation he ruled like a stern father. Why did Mubarak's regime kill and torture? The motives were power and survival. His victims, Islamists, leftists, journalists, or anyone challenging his rule, were targeted to silence dissent. Psychology calls this instrumental aggression, violence as a tool to achieve goals. Unlike serial killers driven by sadistic pleasure, Mubarak's crimes were pragmatic sadism, where suffering was a means to an end. His choice of victims was strategic. Dissidents like Muslim Brotherhood members or Coptic activists were threats to his secular, pro-Western regime, per Wikipedia. Psychoanalytically, these victims were projections of his insecurities, rebels who mirrored the chaos he feared within himself. By crushing them, he reinforced his identity as Egypt's unassailable patriarch. The methods were horrifyingly systematic. In Cairo Scorpion Prison, detainees face stress positions, hung by their arms for hours, bones cracking per Amnesty International. Electric shocks targeted genitals, leaving scars that never healed. Sexual assault was rampant. Men and women were raped with batons, their screams echoing through cells per Human Rights Watch. A 2004 report quoted a detainee, "They stripped me, tied my hands, and shocked me until I passed out. I woke up to them laughing," per The Guardian. During the 1986 mutiny, Mubarak's forces fired on conscripts, some as young as 18, their bodies left in the streets, per Middle East Eye. The 1995 Addis Ababa assassination attempt on Mubarak himself, allegedly by Egyptian Islamic Jihad, unleashed a crackdown where thousands were tortured, per Wikipedia. A survivor told Al Jazeera, "They beat us with cables, burned us with cigarettes. They wanted names, but we had none to give." These acts weren't impulsive. They were choreographed to break spirits and deter rebellion. Psychologically, Mubarak's detachment suggests psychopathic traits, not the serial killer kind, but functional psychopathy where empathy is sacrificed for power. His ability to order mass torture while projecting stability, smiling at summits, shaking hands with world leaders, shows a compartmentalized psyche, splitting his public savior persona from the tyrant within. Psychoanalytically, his regime's violence was a transference of childhood rigidity. Just as his father punished disobedience, Mubarak punished Egypt, believing fear was order. His obsession with legacy, grooming his son Gamal for succession, per Newsweek, points to malignant narcissism, a need for eternal reverence. The emergency law, granting unchecked power, was his psychological crutch, a way to silence the chaos he dreaded, per Human Rights Watch. The scale of the horror is staggering. Estimates suggest 17,000, 30,000 detentions yearly, with hundreds killed or disappeared, per Amnesty International. In 2005, security forces attacked Sudanese refugees in Cairo, killing 56, including children, their bodies dragged away, per The Guardian. A witness said, "They beat them with sticks, sprayed them with water cannons. Kids were screaming, but they didn't stop," per Al Jazeera. Mubarak's orders were clear. Crush resistance, no matter the cost. His regime's torture chambers, dubbed slaughterhouses by survivors, used tools, whips, pliers, acid, to maximize pain, per Human Rights Watch. A 2010 cable leak revealed U.S. diplomats knew of the torture, but supported Mubarak for stability, per WikiLeaks. This wasn't chaos. It was a calculated ecosystem of fear, Mubarak its cold-hearted conductor. How did he get away with it? Mubarak's charm and strategic alliances were his armor. To the west, he was a bulwark against Islamism, securing billions in U.S. aid, per Wikipedia. At home, state media painted him as Egypt's savior, per Answers.com. His military background gave him a disciplined facade, but colleagues noted his paranoia, per Newsweek. Psychology calls this paranoid personality traits, where distrust fuels control. He survived 6 assassination attempts, including a 1999 knife attack in Port Said, hardening his resolve, per Wikipedia. His refusal to appoint a vice president until 2011, Omar Suleiman, was a narcissistic move, ensuring no rival could challenge him, per Newsweek. The end came with the 2011 Arab Spring. On January 25th, millions flooded Tahrir Square, chanting, "Down with Mubarak." Security forces killed over 800 protesters, firing live rounds and running them over with vans, per Amnesty International. A survivor told BBC, "They shot at us like we were nothing. I saw a boy's head explode." Mubarak's defiance, offering reforms while ordering crackdowns, showed his delusional narcissism, believing he was indispensable. On February 11, 2011, he resigned, forced out by the military, per Wikipedia. Tried for corruption and protester deaths. He was sentenced to life in 2012, but acquitted on appeal in 2017, per The Guardian. He died in 2020 at 91, buried with military honors, per Wikipedia. His trial photo, lying on a stretcher, frail in a white jumpsuit, shocked Egypt. A fallen god exposed, per Newsweek. Philosophically, Mubarak's life was a tragedy of existential hubris. He saw himself as Egypt's father, his rule a divine mandate, echoing Nietzsche's will to power. Yet, his reliance on fear betrayed a Sartrean bad faith, denying his freedom to choose justice over tyranny. His end, reviled, powerless, mirrors Camus' absurdism. He sought immortality through control, only to face the void of his own irrelevance. His legacy, stained by blood, asks, what is a man who trades humanity for power? As Kierkegaard might argue, Mubarak's despair was his refusal to face his moral emptiness, choosing domination over authenticity. This is Hosni Mubarak's terror. A man who turned a nation into a prison, his orders echoing in torture cells and mass graves. Psychology shows a mind wired for control, scarred by rigidity and fueled by narcissism. Psychoanalysis reveals a soul trapped by fear, punishing Egypt for his own chaos. As your pulse races, imagine those cells, the screams, the blood. He's gone, but his shadow lingers, a warning that power can twist a hero into a monster, smiling as the world burns.